Oh, thank you very much.
I remember when I was studying, I had this job at a 0-hour contract at this call centre.
Yeah.
And I got an ear infection. So I thought a reasonable request was can I have my own set of headphones? Or, even if I have to purchase them myself.
Yeah.
Anyway, welcome to the very, very special issue of the Chronicle. My co-host Dan and I are very excited to be filming, to be recording with the one, the only Chlöe Swarbrick.
Woo. Kia ora. Thank you for having me.
Now, Chloe, very important. Richie Rich, Bruce Wayne. Who's got more money?
Who's got more money in this hypothetical world?
What do you mean hypothetical?
Are they even in the same universe?
Yeah.
Look, if both of them are real, then I think that we've found evidence of the multiverse theory. Who's got more money? Probably... I'm just thinking about what they do with their money.
Well, that's a good point. Don't you think Bruce Wayne could actually be more of a real superhero?
And just pay taxes?
Pay taxes?
Yeah.
Just pay taxes, Bruce.
Yeah, fix the health system and the housing system. Maybe there'll be a little bit less crime in Gotham.
And what kind of parents were Thomas and Martha Wayne? They left their kid with the butler.
Well, they were dead. But...
Yeah, look, I don't know what time frame or chronology.
Was there not
we're
a
working
closer
to now.
relative? No, just leave the kid with the butler. He'll be fine.
Yeah.
Look,
true.
there is evidence that shows in deeply unequal societies that even those who are incredibly well off also have poorer mental health because they are disconnected from people who are different from them. So, look, if there's anything we can learn from Bruce Wayne.
Well, I think that's where the Joker movie was so really clever in the way it painted that disparity between, hey, Wayne's, pay your taxes.
Yeah. Fix it. Fix society. Maybe the reason that you're having to run around in tights and your little pretend abs suit is because, you're contributing towards mass inequality.
Anyway, that's not what this interview was about.
But it's a great start, isn't it?
Great start, throw you off guard. See, that's my trick. It's all my.
We've been wondering where this is going.
All my clever training coming to the fore. But what I did want to talk about is you've been quite vocal about the supporting the protesters in China against censorship, and I think it's a really opportune time for us to talk about that because you guys have been such a strong supporter of the Chronicle, and I'd love to hear your take on. A lot of politicians don't even understand the concept of the fourth estate.
Yeah, well, I'd also say that as we've kind of seen, at the very least, as I've witnessed throughout my lifetime, and I've got 4.5 years in background at 95 BFM, number one alternative radio station in Auckland. Yeah.
Were you a DJ there?
I wish that I could say that I was a DJ, but my music taste wasn't that good. I was in the news team and ended up hosting The Wire for a few years before kind of throwing things away and starting to run for the Auckland Mayoralty back in 2016.
That was a big deal, Chlöe Swarbrick.
Comma, 22 years old.
I think you've got good music taste. I saw you at the Boy Harsher gig.
Yeah.
That was cool.
Oh, that was a great dance. My friend
yeah.
Juju took me. Yeah, that was in the midst of some really hard times with the flooding and the cyclone and otherwise. But to your question 6, the fourth estate, what I would say is I have seen, even through my kind of experience in the public sphere, if you can call it that, over the past 6 years, that there has been an overt and quite serious focus on infotainment and kind of controversial headlines and sound bites over looking into some of those more substantive issues that I think are really important for people to know about and therefore inform the ability to participate in politics and the public sphere and all of those debates that seem really highfalutin and elitist only because people are so consistently only fed that infotainment stuff.
I know. I mean, what qualifies as news? Some All Blacks girlfriend gets, arrested. That's news. What was it? Beyonce is not coming to New Zealand, and Ed Sheeran is turning up at a concert somewhere.
Oh, I've had some real peculiar situations, even, with the things that have become news about myself in the past few years. Like, I was interviewed by a journalist a few years ago. At the end of the year, it was supposed to be this wrap up of, here's what's happened in Parliament over the past year, and here's what, we're looking forward to the next year. And in the process of that interview, they asked me about my relationship, my personal private relationship, and the fact that I was in a relationship with my partner, who is a woman, and that became the headline. And it was something that was terrifying to look forward to and down the barrel of for 3 weeks, waiting for them to kind of turn my life into salacious headlines that would get cut through in clicks.
Totally, that's what it's about. I mean, we all love a good cat video, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But
A cat video is still a thing on the internet?
yeah.
Yeah, for me.
Hours of entertainment. It's amazing how funny cats can be. Or dogs failing at being dogs. That's hilarious too. But talking about social media now, you'd know my friend Adrian Christie that decided not to run for election.
Our local board,
And I asked her about that, and she was like, it's just too stressful.
Yeah.
It's not the work itself, it's the abuse you get.
Yeah.
Death threats. She said she was, talking to the police about, pretty serious threats that she was getting, pretty invasive. And they're like, well, what do you expect us to do about it?
Yeah.
And especially with Jacinda as well, stepping down. I mean, and I might be showing my bias, but I think Jacinda's will be remembered as being one of our best leaders.
Yeah, I think that's completely fair.
Well, until you get up there. Then you'll set a new standard.
The Prime Minister of Karangahape Road. I can reflect just only there, obviously, on my own personal experience and say, things are pretty wild out there, I think, especially if you don't look or sound like what might be assumed to be the archetype of the people who are supposed to be in these spaces and these institutions and otherwise. Sure. And the flip side of that is that you also kind of have to work a lot harder to be considered legitimate or valid in those spaces. Like, the bar is so low for some of our politicians, even during elections. The bar that I've had to meet, just to, to constantly be right, because if there's any space for attack, then you're attacked.
Yeah. You spoke before about being interviewed, and my God, she's into girls. Get out of town.
No one cared when I was dating a man.
No,
right?
No, and would a man be subject to the same sort of questioning? I mean, do you find as a female politician, there's just some nonsense that kind of gets taken for granted?
Oh man, I'm very lucky, and I think many MPs are very lucky and very privileged that our staff are the ones who filter a lot of that stuff. So, Amber and Jordan and Sarah really see the brunt of those things, but. Yeah, definitely. If I compare it to even the social media commentary, which I haven't given anyone the keys to my social media, and I compare it to male politicians, oh boy.
Sorry.
Social media.
Yep.
Social media. I try and treat social media not just as a platform to say my piece, but as a genuine engagement tool. So I see it as a really useful space to try and have conversations with people. The approach that I take to engaging with people, even if people are being very vehemently, sometimes quite nasty, is...
The things people say is just like, my God, do you talk to your mum like that?
Well, I don't think they'd say them in person.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, through a screen, it seems to be a lot easier to dehumanise
and
depersonalise people. Exactly. But if there is a granule of truth in what that person is saying, if they do have a legitimate gripe, I'll try and address it.
Yeah, it's like road rage. People start driving and then they get really crazy and angry that they wouldn't do if they're face to face.
4-wheel drive owners. Honestly, getting behind the wheel of a 4-wheel drive, that makes people go a bit mental. I think you should actually have to have a special endorsement on your license to have a 4-wheel drive.
There's actually evidence of that.
Really?
There's evidence that shows that actually just sitting in traffic jams is really bad for people's mental health. But when you have a car-dominant space or mode of transport, people become all the more that you see, you're attuned to seeing everything as an obstacle. We're going to talk at half speed.
Yeah, you're doing
I
well.
feel like this is how we'll bring it back.
Yeah, everyone will be like, did you hear Chloe on the Chronicle? She was so stoned. I've never heard her talk that slowly in my life.
Wow. It's actually, speaking about social media, one of the most hilarious things that has kind of dogged me online for, the past 5-6 years has definitely been this kind of stereotype that by virtue of like daring to advocate for drug law reform that I'm apparently stoned all of the time. And the images that people will say that I'm stoned and look at her red eyes and it's
You do have amazing eyes though.
Oh, thank you.
That's why I think you're one of those lizard people. That's what
I've
they
also
do.
had people say that by the way that I move my tongue that I'm
it's like a thing.
Look at my lips.
Apparently these lizard people, they're like shapeshifters and they've infiltrated our
Like an
governments at the highest level.
Yeah, if only. I wish I could turn into a lizard, make life far more fun.
What do you think of all that money that's getting spent on going to Mars and back to the moon? Or there's a billboard. I don't think it's a Greens billboard, but it's like, let's get to carbon zero first.
Yeah, I think the really interesting thing about reflecting about the space race historically is that it was like this big sense of pride and all about how we're going to develop scientifically and develop the technology to do what is supposed to be this massive and amazing feat. Discussion now seems to be, how do we colonize space?
Right.
Which, and it's led a lot by corporate interests as opposed to national interests and all the rest. So,
could you imagine, like, if Elon Musk and his mates
it's a terrifying vision of the future.
Set up a colony on Mars.
A terrifying vision of the future.
You can be like, come to Mars.
Yeah, now we don't have to save the planet because we can just go to Mars.
But that's the like Wall-E District 9, very dystopian version of the future, right? And this is kind of the interrelation of when I really try and unpack for people why we have to care about both people and the planet. You can't disaggregate those two things. Is that at the logical extent of the economic system, which is deeply exploitative of both people and the planet, if we're to keep that track running and we allow the Elon Musks of the world to colonize the Mars or the moon or whatever, then you have a future where we've got the rich people living their best life on Mars and, the lower income folks left to clean up the mess on Earth. It's not a great outcome.
What do you think realistically, like, the world's going to look like in 50 to 100 years' time?
I'll give you what I would like the world to look like. And I think, a really important component of whether we're capable of achieving that is noting that, as actually my friend and colleague Julianne Genter, who's another Green MP, said just the other day, that in order to get to that place, we are going to require cooperation of the human race on a scale that we have never seen before, and a level of trust.
Could AI actually assist with that sort of thing? I mean,
or take over and do the things that are supposed to be in our best interest or otherwise, but we don't know how that turns out.
Well, I think AI is going to be just as susceptible to viruses as we are to bacteria. So, can you imagine? Suddenly your self-driving Uber is saying, no, I'm not letting you go.
Yeah, I think where on earth were we going with this, Six? You've just taken me down about 10 rabbit holes.
I know, that's what we do.
What's my moon rising? I don't know.
How would you like to see K Road in the future?
Oh, there we go. That was the question. What kind of future do I think? So, if we were to talk about like economics, which is often the refrain of, supposedly things aren't possible because they're politically or economically or financially or otherwise impossible, which was all proven to be completely untrue during COVID-19, where, all of these things like flexible working arrangements for single parents or people with disabilities, direct payments to folks, housing of people who are experiencing homelessness, all of those things that we had been told for so long were impossible happened virtually overnight, which once again demonstrated them not to be impossible, but to be a matter of political willpower. So what is this thing called the economy that we all talk about and that politicians often use as a refrain for why we can't do things? Well, the economy is a set of rules. I feel like I've got through the frog in my throat though. So the economy is a set of rules, right? The economy is all of us and the stuff that we create and the rules that we put in place about how we're going to distribute that stuff and what we think is fair. And the game of Monopoly actually was invented in the late 1800s, early 1900s by a woman called Elizabeth Hall, I think it was, actually originally to demonstrate the pitfalls of an economy that was set up on the premise of land banking or monopolizing property, to show that it was all effectively about luck in terms of how the dice was rolled as to where you ended up landing, and therefore how, you know, life ended up playing out. It was supposed to teach young people that, you know, this like capitalist model is inherently unsustainable and actually not good fun or just for everybody, but we'll end up with the whole family fighting.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have family rules?
We've all got family rules, don't we? I don't even know what me, my sister, and my dad would play it as. But the point that I'm making is that I think that there's some really cool models for how we can reconceptualize the economy that are out there at the moment. The likes of donut economics, which is basically how do we create a system that, you know, redistributes the baseline essential needs for everybody, but also operates in such a way that we live within planetary boundaries. And that's kind of the notion of the donut. So we don't want to fall into that hole in the middle or shoot past those bits at the top.
What if we just gave people what they needed?
Well, I mean,
You know,
wouldn't that
it's
be
like-
great?
Yeah, it's like...
We've spent so
and-
long demonizing socialism when it turns out that it's just about ensuring that everybody has what they need to survive.
Yeah, it's like, you know, you need a car, you get given a car. You need, you know, I mean, people say that a cashless society can't work. It's like been proven to, I mean, Māori didn't have a cash society before Pākehā told them it came along. And that's the thing that cracks me up about this too. It's like, you know, Tasman and his crew turn up and they say, we want to buy your some land from you. And Māori are like, what's this buy?
Right.
What's own?
What's own?
Yeah, the notion of ownership.
How can you sell something if you don't even have a concept of ownership?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And you have a concept of kaitiakitanga or of guardianship instead. No, absolutely. But I think, you know, if I'm to put on my kind of hat of the kind of world that I'd like to think that, you know, my great grandchildren, if I even have children, are going to be living in, is one that actually recognizes the inherent value of both people and the planet, and that we conceptualize our economy or the frameworks of how we organize ourselves as a society in such a way that prioritizes those things above made up concepts like money. If you really want to annoy a right wing politician, tell them money's made up.
Yeah,
but it's true.
But the thing is, it costs like $2 or something to produce $1. It's more expensive to produce money than it's actually worth.
Don't get me started on bullshit jobs as well, and the way that we have created entire industries based on justifying,
Real estate agents.
Oh man.
Yeah, it cracks me up about real estate agents' adverts. It's like they think they're rock stars or something.
I honestly find it hilarious, though, the similarities between real estate agents and politicians. They're the same thing, right? They've got the colour in the background. They've got us smiling with, you know, sometimes a thumbs up. And then our name, the quote.
This person's a real human. Great.
We promise they have teeth.
Yeah.
Excellent, knowledgeable stuff. It's like, if you're not knowledgeable, you shouldn't be doing that job.
Yeah. How about K Road, Chloe? What's K Road mean to you?
Karangahape Road. So I, just as background, grew up around kind of the isthmus in Tamaki Makaurau, so kind of, you know, down to Onehunga, Hillsborough, to the Waitemata. And I grew up in dozens, tried to count them the other day, dozens of different rental properties bouncing around with my parents. And it wasn't until I was probably about 14 or 15 and started bussing into town on the weekends and kind of finding my sense of place on Karangahape Road, actually at Alleluia, which obviously used to be in St Kev's Arcade, where I would just, you know, pay my fee of $3.50 for a long black and sit there and people watch through the day.
Right,
and as a teenager, having that exposure to the central city and to the lifestyles of such diverse and different people to what you see in the suburb really, I think, exposed me to a different world being possible. And despite not really knowing it growing up, you know, me and my dad never talked about it in the frame of this was that we were talking about politics, but we were talking about power and what felt fair and, you know, justice and all of those different things. It was also an engaging in the city centre as a teenager that I also kind of, you know, first realised that there very literally were people who were experiencing homelessness in this country. So, yeah, it was the awakening of a lot of different things.
And what did you think when you saw people homeless? I mean, what was your thoughts about that?
Why is this happening? It's just, you know, like, and, you know, now I'm in a position where I have access to the data that tells us that, you know, we live in a country where we have the highest rates of wealth inequality that we literally have ever seen on record, such that the bottom half of New Zealanders, 2.5 million New Zealanders, own just 2% of the wealth. The top 10% own 60% of the wealth. The top 1% own a quarter of the wealth in this country. So anybody who tells you that there's not enough to go around, there is. It's just being hoarded in, you know, fewer and fewer hands. And the greatest perversity of all of that is that the little people are told to fight amongst themselves as opposed to realizing that we could all be doing a lot better and not having to exploit the planet or each other as much if we just decided to chill out and figure out how to live. You know, sound like happy, but and greater harmony with the, like, this is the thing that always gets me, right? Why are we working so hard if not for these outcomes, to be able to spend more time with our families or with our communities or with our friends, to be able to pursue the passions or the things that we care about? There's that allegory of the businessman who is watching, or a tourist who's watching his fisherman out on the water, lazily catching his fish during the day and taking it home to his family, and the businessman is saying to, you know, the fisherman, oh, you know, if you worked really hard, then you could catch way more fish during the day, and then eventually you could invest in a motorized boat, and then after you invest in the motorized boat, then you can obviously catch more fish as a result of that investment, and then, you know, you can eventually buy a helicopter that can send the fish to, you know, the greatest restaurants in the world, and then eventually you can end up retiring, and then, you know, what would you do when you retire? And you'd just be sitting at the end of the wharf catching your fish for your family. Yeah. I don't understand why we've set up these systems that make us so stressed and diminish our mental and physical health and the health of our planet so much, when, we very easily could bake in those principles at the start.
It's like exploitation, especially in a lot of creative industries, is not only tolerated, it's expected. Yeah, you're expected to work. A friend of mine was telling me yesterday that because the demand for tattoo artists is so high, that they don't get paid when they're doing their apprenticeship. So for 3 or 4 years, they've got to sustain themselves. And there's this kind of, I mean, at one stage in society, I'm sure businesses invested in their staff, but now we're expected to get these massive debts for an education, often in industries that have no jobs for us. And, you know, even in the industries like journalism, for example, you're expected to have a degree level qualification for McDonald's wages. Nothing against McDonald's, by the way, because apparently they're
all labour is skilled labour.
They're a very very good employers by all accounts, with great career options. But, you know, it's like, we're just like setting people up for poverty from day one.
Oh, but that I mean, it's baked into all that stuff that I was saying before about the kinds of the notion of the economy that we've set up. Is, I mean, even the very narrative of the cost of living, if you're really to interrogate that, it costs to live,
right?
Like how plugged in are we to all of this stuff that we just accept as, you know, in my maiden speech, which is a very problematic term for the first speech that you give in Parliament, which is when you're supposed to set your vision for all the things that you want to achieve, blah blah blah. I said that if I can, you know, achieve one thing in my time in Parliament, it's to hopefully help contribute towards changing people's understanding of what politics is, because it's not parliamentarians standing up in suits and delivering Shakespearean soliloquies in the wood panel chamber. Politics is about
There's
power.
definitely a wood panel chamber.
There is a wood
I've
panel
seen the
chamber.
wood panel
Yeah,
chamber.
it's just like Hogwarts. There's plush seats and plush carpet.
Hogs and warts.
And plenty of colonial artifacts. But it, and again, in that, you can see that I'm a fan of the metaphor or the allegory, but was offering this kind of metaphor of there's a dog on a riverbank and it sees a fish and it says to the fish, because the fish and the dog can communicate here, how's the water? And the fish says, what water? And it's that very notion that a lot of the most simplest realities around us are things that we don't tend to question or interrogate or think about. And I think, to bring it all back to that kind of conversation around the economy and the rules and the way that things operate right now, a lot of people understandably are very angry and upset because they know that things aren't quite working properly. But instead of getting to that kind of core of what is driving that angst and that disconnect, I'm really gutted that we're seeing instead far more polarization as opposed to solidarity.
Yeah, just arguing on the internet with each other instead of like trying to make systemic
instead of
change.
unionizing and like
I was
fighting
just
for better.
going to bring out the whole union option. I mean, you talk to unions about unions to baby boomers, and they're like, "What did they ever do for me?" I mean, you talk,
delivered you like a weekend.
a 40-hour work week.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just we have. It seems that like through neoliberalism, there's been a systematic deconstruction of our community units.
Well, they didn't even try and hide that though. There's very systematic and intentional union busting, big time.
Yeah, and it's just. I mean, there was a imbalance of power, and there was a problem, when they were trying to get ships and things in. But Coco's Cantina down the road, they have no problem keeping and attracting staff because they treat people with respect and dignity.
Pay them right.
And pay them right.
Foster a good culture.
And make good food.
Yeah, there's that too.
It doesn't even have to be that good, to be honest. I mean, Coco's is fantastic, but I'll put up with average food for a good service, and what I mean. But I'll eat almost anything. To be honest, if somebody else is paying, especially. What was your childhood like?
What was my childhood like? Wow, straight in there.
See that fake left, go right.
What was my childhood like? Wow. So there's a lot of different perspectives or pockets of time that we could get into there, but
just give us the Reader's Digest version.
Yeah, the really succinct version is that I feel very lucky to have had the dad that I did. So this is available on public record. The guy who I call my dad is technically my adoptive father. So I was born Chlöe Ferguson, and he adopted me as Chlöe Swarbrick. I tracked down and met my biological dad for the first time when I was 21 or 22 years old. So yeah, Paul Swarbrick, my dad, my adoptive, but the guy who I call my dad. I feel very, very, very lucky to have been raised primarily by him. He had a huge, huge impact on me, and I think, as I was alluding to before...
Is that where your moral compass comes from?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I've got... There's so many times over the past several years where I have been in interviews, and I've been like... My old man always said that if you never tell a lie, then you never have to remember what you said.
Yeah, my granddad used to say
that.
Yeah,
my dad always used to say that... one of the things that he took from Homer Simpson was can't win, don't try. He always said different people see different things differently, which again was something that really resonated with me. Yeah, there are a lot of parallels between my dad and Homer Simpson. But yeah, he taught me a lot of things that I didn't realize were like actually quite deep philosophical or ethical or political considerations or kind of constructive, quite creative ways to look at the world. So yeah, I feel very lucky to have had that in my childhood. Yeah. Right. He goes hard. Yeah.
Cool. Hey, look, Chloe, I know you're pressed for time, and
hit me with the hard stuff, Six.
That's it. No,
That's it.
I didn't want to talk about politics too much because you get that.
You just talked about the moon and about the economy.
I mean,
Batman.
But Richie Rich.
Yeah.
But, you get asked all those political marijuana reform. Is it a lost cause? You get to talk about that shit all the time. I wanted today to be more about, about who the real Chloe is. Will the real Chlöe Swarbrick please stand up? But no, I want to take
this narrative. She was sitting down, but yeah, I am metaphorically standing up.
I want to really thank you. I'm a big fan of yours. I love you. I will be voting green.
We'll try to deliver you another referendum or something else so you can give us 3 ticks.
No, just get us the same one we had last time. We'll get it right this time.
Come on, guys.
Any final words, Dan?
Yeah, well, it's the K Road Chronicle podcast. I'm interested. What's your hopes for K Road? How would you like to see the street progressing?
I would like to see, I think we're in a really interesting time, and we are at a crossroads, especially as, we look to the CRL development opening in the next few years, where we are going to have to confront, and I've been talking to Jamie at KBA about this and others, particularly, operating the small businesses around these parts. We are going to have to make a decision and have to have some of those tough conversations about what gentrification means and what that looks like, and how we ensure that we protect the things that otherwise might be commodified and priced out of this area, because they are the things that have been the community who built it. If you again look at the kind of definition of gentrification, it's effectively the lower income and diverse people who can't afford to live anywhere else come in and through blood, sweat and tears build something which is culture, and then that ends up being commodified and bought and killed. So how do we prevent that from happening? And that has to be a community-wide conversation. So one of my hopes and dreams for Karangahape Road, that we continue to foster a sense of community where everybody belongs. It's the reason that I'm here. It's the reason that our Auckland Central office is here. It's the reason that I'm on the record saying that if I could live in a 1 kilometre stretch of road, then it would be just in this place. It's got everything that I need, and so many facets of humanity and experience and even nature. I love and adore it.
It could be a real model for a community model.
Absolutely. I mean, there's kind of conversations around the likes of the 15-minute city and otherwise. Like I've got mates who are currently in a bit of a bind about potentially having to move further afield, and it sucks because we're going to lose again those people who gravitate into this space and who make it what it is.
Well, that's coming back to Coco's Cantina, who are not a sponsor, by the way.
Yet.
Just genuine love.
But, I was talking to Damaris a couple of years ago, and she was saying she might be forced into a situation where she has to move the restaurant so that her staff can afford to live close enough to work there.
Which is cooked.
Right.
Which undermines the whole system.
It's almost like the economy is built on false premises.
No.
No way.
Don't say so.
Wow, what a
Next you'll be
trademark thing to go out on.
Next you'll be saying the tooth fairy doesn't exist.
I did say on Breakfast TV this morning that any so-called political leaders who believe in these trickle-down economic fairy tales don't deserve to lead. So,
Good on you.
Well, we've still got a lot of people that believe in God too. So. And on that note, as we can hear my sponsors dropping, thank you very much, Chloe. Thank you very much.
Ngā mihi e hoa.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You.
Thank you.